after years of war. No one could stand between my men. And home.
The fact that it was written almost 3,000 years ago and is still being adapted today into a film, I think just goes to show how rich this book is.
That every time you read it, you actually get something new out of it and find something different. I think that's what makes it such a great classic.
We can recommend the Odyssey as a genuinely unique experience of artistic pleasure. And so our conversations are rich and different each time we talk about it.
Promise me you will come back.
What if I can't?
Welcome to our podcast with John Adams College. We are some of the faculty with John Adams, and we are going to be discussing Homer's Odyssey today. I'm Dr. Jennifer Jensen. This is Dr. Carl Scott. This is Mahala Bassett. We are super excited to talk about the Odyssey. We all love it. It's a great book. We all have a different translation too, which I think is valuable to know. So the Odyssey is the story of Odysseus coming home from the battle. So if you've read the Iliad was mostly the battles of Troy and the fight against Troy. And the Odyssey then takes place of him coming home after. And you get backstories, and it's not told in an exact sequence, but he shows these backstories and talks about them a lot. And
it essentially, more specific details, Odysseus leaves Troy and goes on a series of adventures. He encounters monsters such as the Cyclopes, has a little run-in with them, and he eats a lot of his men, and they luckily escape. There's the other monsters such as the Sirens and the Lotus Eaters. Eventually makes it to the island of Circe, where he spends some time.
Which also is a problem because she tries to turn all the sailors into animals.
Into pigs. So he stays there with her for some time, and then eventually gets instructions from her of how to get home. He goes to the underworld to speak with a prophet to tell him what's going on at home as he's preparing to leave. It tells him about the monsters that he's going to have to encounter, and
how to even prepare for some of those.
Exactly. And then through the next series of events, he ends up getting shipwrecked on the island of Calypso for about 7 years until the gods decide that it's finally time for him to be able to go home.
Yeah. And about, almost half the book is, and really if you count the first 4 books, it's set in Ithaca. So the Odyssey is famous for, what we've been talking about, these kind of island hopping adventure stories.
Which is only really the middle little section of the book.
Yes, the middle, maybe 9, 10, I can't remember the number. And it's very complicated the way it's set up. So when you first read the Odyssey, you're kind of like, well, when are we going to get to the Odyssey? It's talking about his son, Telemachus, and it's describing the situation on Ithaca where he was king, and now there's these people called the suitors who are kind of using marriage and hospitality conventions to kind of have their way with the island and be able to just feast all the time off of Odysseus's property.
And trying to marry his wife.
Well, trying to marry his wife, yeah.
And they're basically just destroying all that Odysseus had built up before he left.
So the second half of the book is Odysseus' return to Ithaca and kind of arranging a kind of surprise attack upon the suitors. There's a swineherd that he enlists in this, and
it's really interesting how here he goes off to war, and then to come home he has to also sort of fight a war to come back to his home. Right. He has to. It's just this constant battle of trying to make it work the way it should.
It's almost as if he had to fight the monsters out there on the sea and also has to fight the monsters here in his home as sort of a cleansing of the kingdom.
Which are just people who are not acting the way they should and not doing the things they should be doing. But are they any worse than the monsters that are supposed to be the really awful, hideous things. Yet the people are kind of doing the same, acting the same way.
Right, abusing the laws of hospitality and
Yes. And trying to kill him, trying to kill Telemachus' son. Yeah.
But I mean, spoiler alert, he does wind up at home with his wife, and that is the official end of the Homeric Odyssey. One of the big issues is what they call the Homeric problem, which is kind of the issue of whether there's really authorial intent that you can get from Homer, or whether you should be thinking about the various sources that he built upon and incorporated into his texts.
right, and there's also the question of who was Homer really.
Yeah.
Tradition has it that he was a single blind poet, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that this was put together through a lot of oral tradition, that maybe different storytellers added their own ideas as it went on.
But either way, he was already so well known. The Odyssey and the Iliad were already so well known by the time that even Aristotle comes along, that he talked about how important the Odyssey and the Iliad were in
Right.
Homer's works.
Doesn't he say, like, everything is just footnotes to Homer?
Yes. So for us to be talking about the Odyssey still today, I think is really, really valuable, because there's so much that we can learn. Human nature has not changed, and we can still learn a lot from this. That's why we see the movie coming out this summer, I think, too. There's so much here to learn. So we're going to kind of focus on Odysseus and Penelope, their family, versus all the other stuff going on. But
I think a great place to start with talking about Odysseus is just to look at the very first description of him in the Odyssey. And I want to talk about this word polytropos. In English we have tell me, muse, of a man of many ways is probably the best way to interpret this word, polytropos. And a lot of translators will have fun with this word. I have here the Daniel Mendelsohn translation. He translates this as the man with many roundabout ways. But I've also heard the man of twists and turns. The man of many devices is how this one translates it. But I think this is an interesting word because we can take it in two ways, both physically, literally, and symbolically. Odysseus has many wanderings and many ways trying to get home after the Trojan War. He goes all over the place. He passes Ithaca and he comes back, and as well as he himself is a man of many ways. He's very resourceful. He's very cunning, smart, almost tricky in a sense is how he's often described.
he always has an idea of how to fix something or how to get through something or
Right.
solve a problem.
I mean, many translators will take that first line, well, a few will take that first line and just throw in a man of many wiles or many tricks. And that is part of his, you know, why he has many ways. I mean, we meet characters in the book. There's a character that we meet that's kind of a demigod, Proteus, that is a shapeshifter. And Odysseus himself, because he's so good at tactics, strategies, he can be kind of a shapeshifter himself. He'll tell different stories about what's where he's from, what's been happening with him as it suits him. And so I think, you know, we're getting a different picture of the hero with Odysseus, because we, you know, with Achilles we have someone where there's the issue of the excellent warrior confronting death, and everything that comes with that. But with Odysseus, there's much more this issue of tactics in war and in life, you know, and if you use too many tactics in life, do you kind of become a person that can't be defined, a person of too many ways, let us say. And that's going to be a big issue for the Odysseus character, because he's trying also to get home, but maybe his many-wayedness will just tempt him to kind of keep traveling to different islands, and so that's kind of...
Or he won't stay on the task of, I got to get home.
Right.
He tends to be. And the shapeshifter, I mean, that totally plays in at the end when he comes back home. And he's meeting his family and pretending to be an old man
Right.
or dressed up as an old man.
The fact that there's almost a few different personalities within himself competing for attention. Like there's a couple of different worlds that are calling to him, the world of the monsters and gods. He is tempted to be a part of, continue exploring forever, maybe even be the husband of a goddess, as we'll maybe talk about a little later with Calypso, or this choice to return home and continue being a human, just being immortal, return to his duties as husband, father, and king. I think that play within him contributes to his man of many turns.
Yeah.
So.
And you definitely see his human nature throughout the play, where throughout the book, where he makes mistakes, he does things he shouldn't have done, and it ends up costing. He has to pay the consequences of those. But in the end, he is able to get back, and so become the hero of the story.
Right.
So he gets the homecoming that a lot of the other Greek heroes did not.
He talks about in the very beginning they were destroyed by their own wild recklessness. So he's not going to be reckless, or at least that's what he talks about here, which I think is really interesting. Because he is, at some points he was reckless, and that's when he would get in trouble, like with the Cyclops.
Yeah, I mean, his fellow comrades said, let's just take a few things out of this cave and call it good. Let's just do some standard raiding. But he wanted to stick around and meet the Cyclops, whose name is Polyphemus, to get a guest friend gift. He was excited to be bringing home very valuable gifts to, I guess, impress Penelope or his fellow Ithacans.
And maybe partly because he lost most of his ships on the way.
Well, yeah.
He only had the one ship at that point, and
Right.
so it was like
So he
has
lost
to get more
all
gifts.
of the treasure he had originally.
Yeah, quite a bit from Troy. But yeah, he kind of presses it. No, let's stay here. Yeah, I know this Cyclops thing is a little strange and maybe doesn't have the same laws that we humans have, but he seems to just sort of trust that, of course he's going to get a gift, right? And instead, the Cyclops is just like, well, I mean, I've got you blocked into this cave with this stone, so I'm just going to eat you guys all, right?
I think this is an interesting distinction between the two worlds that we keep hearing about, this world of monsters and the world of men. There's a passage that's always fascinated me in book 9 when he's describing the Cyclopes to the Phaeacians, and he says, thence we sailed on, grieved at heart, and we came to the land of the Cyclopes, an insolent and lawless folk, who, trusting in the immortal gods, plant nothing with their hands. And he describes how they don't work for themselves at all. And he continues on to say, neither assemblies for council have they, nor appointed laws, but they dwell on the peaks of mountains and hollow caves, and each one is lawgiver to his children and his wives, and they have no regard for one another. And I think that's a really interesting description. And looking at the Greek, he says very specifically the Cyclopes have no themistes, which are sort of divine and natural laws, and they don't have an agora, which in the Greek world, an agora was like the marketplace where people would gather together for not just buying and selling, but also to talk about philosophy and the laws and to vote on things together, especially in say Athens is a democracy. People are getting together in the marketplace, and that's where they're voting on laws. And he says that the Cyclopes don't have any of this. They don't care about living together in community. They have no regard for one another. And I think that's a really interesting comparison between these two worlds, that Odysseus has a choice between either to live lawlessly, wildly, without having any duties or responsibilities, or he can return home. And home to a place that's in turmoil. Ithaca's not doing well at this point, where laws have to be kept, where he has to essentially cleanse his home and go back to his duties as husband, father, and king.
Because that's also true of Calypso and her island. When he's there on the island, there also aren't any rules, right? He can just do whatever and spend all day doing nothing, and it doesn't matter. There's no worry about making sure they have food on the table and you know, a place to live and all of that kind of stuff. Like it's the same, it really is that same idea. And she's all on her own, just like what his description is of the Cyclopes.
Right.
So that's really interesting that it's not just the Cyclopes that we're talking about here.
Yeah,
It's-
Aristotle in his Politics, he has, he essentially says anyone who doesn't follow laws is either a monster or a god. And that's what we see Odysseus running into, because humans, they have to follow laws. They have duties and responsibilities that they have to follow through with, but gods and monsters don't. They're just out there living on their own. They don't have any community. They don't really have families even. We see Calypso all by herself, wants Odysseus to be her husband, offers to make him immortal, and yet he still turns down this paradise because for him it's not really paradise.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Why is he willing to leave this total utopian paradise of I can do whatever I want, I have this goddess for my companion, like I am free to do whatever? Why does he leave that and come back to real life that's human now, and he's going to die and get old and all of that? Why would he do that, do you think? I think that's such an interesting choice that he makes.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not really told how it was at the beginning with Calypso. I mean, obviously she's very beautiful. The descriptions of the island are very beautiful, very fetching. So maybe it started off a little bit like his relationship with Circe. It's just not entirely clear. But by the time it's portrayed in the Odyssey, I mean, we're told that Odysseus is kind of like crying every night.
And he's staring out at the ocean.
He's a hero. This is a book about heroes. There's a lot of crying in this book, a lot of weeping.
There is a lot. That is so true.
So whatever Calypso's giving him, I mean, it's not satisfying him.
Or at least it did at the first. Like he was there for what, 7 years or something?
Right,
like
but he
that,
also
isn't
didn't
it?
have a boat. He couldn't leave.
Right,
Well, she's a goddess, right?
Yeah.
The first, we don't know. Like you were saying, he could have been fine for a while there, thinking, yeah, this isn't too bad.
Yeah.
And then as it got old, and he was getting, doing the same thing. Like you're not progressing. You're not getting any better. You're not becoming the hero you were supposed to become, or acting the hero you were meant to be.
Well, he's also haunted by home and Penelope. Yes. So I mean, the other Greek heroes win Kleos, glory, but he's the Greek hero who most notably wins Nostos, or homecoming, right? Yes. And so
that actually meant something more to him.
Right. He misses Penelope. He misses his son. He misses Ithaca. I mean, I think he even has a place where he talks about Ithaca, and he admits that it's kind of rocky and not so great, but that's his favorite place.
And he even admits to Calypso, he's like, yeah, Penelope is not as pretty as you are.
Oh,
You're
and
a
probably
goddess.
not
She
as
can't
young.
beat you. And yeah, she's not as young, right? I've been gone for 20 years, but still, I want to return home. I want to have my Nostos.
But I do think sometimes that has to do with us, our human natures of we want to progress and we want to be something better and something different. We don't like this static staying the same. Don't you think that's kind of a part of our human natures, is we want to keep growing, we want to keep learning, we want to keep becoming better? And he didn't have that opportunity now for 7 years. He's sitting there doing nothing, not improving at all. I think at one point when he goes back home and he's thinking about stringing the bow, right? And he says to them, well, I'm not sure if I can do it yet because I've been sitting around for a while. Like, I don't know if my muscles are up to this.
Yeah.
Because he hadn't been using them now for 7 years. And so that really makes a big difference. Like he wants to be his best self, which you can't do when you're just in this static place.
And I think that goes back to the idea of the man of many turns, actually, because Odysseus, in a sense, has to keep turning and has to keep having many ways in order to be satisfied with life. If there's just like one straight path and it's the same forever, I don't think he would be satisfied. He wants a life of many ways and many turns.
Well, there's a tension here, because then the question becomes, if he gets home, will he be satisfied at home?
Right.
And there's some elements of the tradition that suggest that maybe he traveled further. And another work we read in our program, Dante's Divine Comedy, Odysseus, he's called Ulysses there, is just, it's basically described that no, he wasn't willing to stay home. He got another crew together, and he said, let's go out. We got to meet interesting new people, see the different ways of mankind. And they wind up out in the Atlantic and approaching Mount Purgatory, which is a no-no, and they're killed. And we meet actually Ulysses in hell. So you could think about the Odysseus character developing in a way where no homecoming is going to be satisfactory or possible for him. And in that case, Calypso her argument could be, stay here. I mean, why seek perfection? You are at perfection. You are living the life of a god, and I'm going to give you immortality.
So if his home life turned out to be like the Calypso Island life of just static, he's not going to be happy, and he's going to go find another journey. So there has to be some way to not be static at home.
Well, I mean, I think he can be a king. He can help raise Telemachus, continue his relationship with Penelope.
He's going to have to build up Ithaca again.
Yeah.
I mean, like any human, he's going to fade in his grandeur. He's not going to be the same Odysseus forever. So, I mean, I guess I interpret Homer as sort of saying there's something salutary about Odysseus being willing to settle, if that's the word, for the life with Penelope in Ithaca, even though he's seen all these amazing things and been with Circe and been with Calypso and, you know.
But there has to be a reason for him to want to go back, right? I mean, it's more than just, she's my wife, don't you think? Like, there has to be, he's getting something from the life at home that he doesn't have on Calypso's island or with Circe.
Which is interesting because when he gets to the island of the Phaeacians, I think there is almost the most tempting offer made to him.
Right.
Because he is accepted by the king and the queen. They take him in, they feed him, they don't ask who he is. But almost immediately, King Alcinous offers his daughter Nausicaa as to be Odysseus's wife. And I think the Odyssey doesn't spend a whole lot of time like talking about Odysseus's mental state at this point, but I think that's got to be probably the most tempting offer so far, because this is great
real
place.
Life even.
Yeah, this is, I mean, these are people that have been good to him. They're not going to hold him against his will. They've offered to take him home. Nausicaa is young and beautiful, right? He could be king.
They're very
after.
rich. It's a rich country with lots of gifts to give.
And at this point, he doesn't even know if Penelope is still faithful to him. Right. He doesn't know if she is
even still if she's
unmarried.
Still alive.
Yeah, well, I think she does know. He does know that she's still alive because he visited the underworld and she wasn't there.
Oh, that's true.
But
that's true.
He doesn't know what the state of his house is going to be like, and still he turns that down. He still wants to go home at that point.
And how about Penelope as a woman of many turns that matches her husband that way? I mean, maybe the other two, Calypso and Circe, were a little too just the same all the time. Because she is very much a woman of many turns in the same way. Right? I mean, she somehow keeps them at bay, the suitors at bay, for 3 years or something.
Right.
While they're trying to get her hand.
Right, yeah, we see her using deception in a similar way as Odysseus, in a much more feminine way than Odysseus. But she says that she's going to weave the shroud of Laertes, which is Odysseus' father, so that when she leaves his household, he'll be taken care of. And so she's like weaving this during the day and then unravels it at night. And she tells the suitors when she's done with this, then she'll pick one of them to marry, but she's never done with this, and they don't catch her at this for 3 years, which is mind-boggling to me. But she's got some tricks up her sleeve as well.
She does.
She's a good match for Odysseus in that way.
Yeah, she does.
And this is underlined by the fact that something that Homer's readers would have known, which might not leap out to us, is that she's actually the cousin of two very famous sisters, Clytemnestra and Helen. And so really these three women are being presented as, Helen, we often sort of think of her as just being beautiful, but carefully read, she's revealed to be very smart, very tricky in her own way. And
Yes.
Clytemnestra,
A woman of many wiles
Yeah.
or many ways herself,
Yeah.
but kind of uses it in the wrong way, which I think differently than Penelope.
right. So both Clytemnestra and Helen are maybe examples of using incredible talent, intellectual, in the wrong way.
Right.
Whereas
And their
Penelope
beauty too.
provide-
They're both
Yeah,
beautiful,
that's
right?
true.
Helen is the reason for the whole story of
Right.
the fall of Troy.
And
Right.
Helen likes the. I mean,
Helen-
I think there's evidence that Helen sort of likes the fact that she's been the cause of all this trouble.
She's
Right.
she's
Yeah,
essentially the cause of all Greek stories everywhere.
Right. So how can we learn from Penelope the same way that we can learn from other people? Like today, what's a lesson we can learn from Penelope today?
Well, one would be that you could be in a situation where the straightforward, that's wrong, I'm not going to do that approach might not really work for you. That these suitors are kind of inviting her and kind of threatening her and her family to, let them party and feast in their household. First of all,
Obviously, she doesn't
yeah.
have the means to just kick them out, which is really interesting. Like she's
Right.
kind of almost imprisoned in her own home from these suitors and what they're doing.
But she apparently makes the calculation that it's better to lead them on in a sense
Right,
than to kind of like lock herself in a closet and say,
Right.
"Renounce it
Or
all."
to try to just give up, to try to push them out. Like she doesn't try to
Yeah,
get rid of
well,
them.
Right.
Right. Because
So-
she keeps coming up with these solutions of, once I complete this, I'll marry one of you. Or here's a challenge, you have to string this bow and shoot an arrow through
Right.
12 axes.
Right.
Once you do that, then I'll marry one of you. But she never really says no.
Right. So, I mean, these essentially are her enemies, but she's behaving in a way that allows them to feel that, oh, okay, basic relations are still good. One of us really could marry Penelope. Right.
Maybe that's
So
more
she's
along
hiding-
her wily side.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
keeping both doors open at once, so to say. In a sense, maybe
Yes.
similar to how Odysseus keeps a lot of doors open.
Well, yeah, I mean, like in the Circe situation, you can say, I mean, you can look at it cynically. You could say, well, Odysseus is just like living it up, and here he gets to be with another goddess and sleep with her. And but I mean, Circe is in command of this island. She's a witch. She's already done things to his men by turning them into various animals. And, it's a scary situation. How do you get Circe enough on your side and get out of this? And then he also turns out to need her for advice.
So it's almost as if they're having to look at their enemies and make their enemies think that they're their friend, right?
Yeah.
Penelope has to be the suitor's friend, and Odysseus has to be Circe's friend.
Yeah.
Even though maybe inside that's not true,
Right.
they're having to put on this facade of, oh no, we're friends and I'm
Yeah.
here, I want to hang out with you and whatever.
Yeah.
And maybe I will marry one of you down the road
Yeah.
or whatever. I mean, but it's a way to work through a situation that could have ended drastically different if
Right.
Circe thought that he was just out to get his men and leave. She could have just killed them all quickly,
Yeah.
probably.
I think so. There's a danger here too, right? The danger is you get used to putting on these disguises, and then you want to live in that life of many ways, many personalities, and you just
Yeah.
can't stop.
I think that danger is very real for Odysseus. Even when he gets home, he's still pretending to be someone else. He makes up countless stories about who he is, tells a different story to every single person.
Right, and what he's done for the time he's been gone, you get a different story constantly.
Exactly.
I mean, it really makes you wonder which story is actually the right story. Are any of them really true that
right.
he tells?
Is he making this up the entire time?
Yes, because you really don't know. He's made it up so many times, it's hard to know.
I mean, you agree though that he needed to cloak his identity from
Right.
the suitors.
Yes.
You can't just
Yes.
say, "I'm Odysseus, I'm back."
Right, because
Right.
they want to kill him. Right?
But
They
it's
try to
still
kill
interesting that he
Telemachus.
cloaks his identity from the swineherd at first, and from his son,
That's
and from
true.
his father. Like,
Yeah.
even at the very end, when he has revealed himself to Penelope and everyone in his household, he goes out to see his father, who's just living alone, has been very poor since Odysseus left, And he still tests his father at first and tries to go through with it. And then his father is just in such despair about his son being gone that he's like, I can't do this anymore. And he reveals himself.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. Like he can't, it's almost like he's lived
compulsion.
through this. He can't trust anybody anymore.
Right.
Not even his
though you
own
would
family.
think his father for sure would be loyal and faithful to him, he still has to test him. Which, back to Penelope, I think there's an excellent mirror here when the way that she tests him when he arrives back home.
Because she isn't trusting either.
Right, because
all of
how
what
is
he
she
says.
supposed to know who he is? Hasn't seen him for 20 years. And wants to test him in a way that only he would know about. And so he sort of has the tables flipped. Instead of him testing everyone, she starts testing him. And asks him things that only he would know, right? Assumes that we can move this marriage bed out into the hallway. And he's like, well, I built this into a live olive tree, so it can't be moved. Did you cut it? And that's the moment that she knows that that's him. But he sort of has the tables flipped on himself.
But I think some of this makes Odysseus a good model for young people today, maybe particularly young men, I'm not sure, because again, it's not just about whether you have the greatest fighting prowess or not. I mean, a lot of us won't have that. What do you do with kind of the wiles of war, the tricks? That's something we can learn from Odysseus and the dangers of using them too much. But the other thing is that, Achilles has to struggle against, tons of other men and the threat of death. But Odysseus, in some weird way, has to struggle with, like, the family or the female, right? I mean, I don't think...
And the other tricks from other people.
I mean, he has to kind of reconnect with Penelope in a way that's good, right? And we can't talk about all that's going on with that, but I mean, there's... Part of the tension in their recognition scenes is... maybe Penelope thinking, can I trust this guy? Those kinds of things. Has he returned to me a good man or not? Those kinds of questions.
I mean, that's really true. She has no idea after 20 years if he's going to come home in a normal, be a good husband, good father type person.
So, I mean, some people have tried to compare his story to that of maybe a deeply damaged veteran of the Vietnam War, the Afghan War. And there's something to that. I think it's often been pushed. There was a recent film version of the Odyssey, The Return, where they really pushed that idea too strongly. But I don't think it can be an accident, just returning to this idea of a hero who has to struggle with the family, that almost all of the monsters he has to deal with in the kind of central section, I mean, they're almost all female. Right?
Yeah,
the
it's
Sirens, Scylla and Charybdis.
Circe, Calypso.
Yeah.
The Cyclops are an exception, but...
So I don't claim to understand what Homer's doing, but there's something with this fuller hero. I'm going to just say Odysseus is a fuller hero than Achilles.
He's not such a flat character, right? I mean, he has more to him.
Well, he has to deal with the challenge of home and wife and child.
Yeah, he has to deal with the challenge of living beyond the war.
Right.
And it's interesting because we see Achilles in the Odyssey briefly when Odysseus is visiting the underworld. Yeah. And we know from the Iliad that Achilles had this choice of either he can live a long life, live past the Trojan War and return home and not be remembered ever. His name will never be known by future generations. Or he could go to the Trojan War and die a glorious death and be remembered forever. And we all know what he chooses. The fact that we're still talking about him today. He chooses to die this glorious death because to him that's all that there is. But the fact is that a glorious death is just an action of one moment. And Odysseus has to live beyond that moment, right? Beyond the glorious winning of the Trojan War to actually coming home and continuing to live. And we see Achilles in the underworld talking to Odysseus, and he specifically tells him, I would rather be the servant of a poor serf somewhere on Earth as a human, as a mortal, than to be king of the underworld. I wish I had stayed and lived and fought the struggle that is living rather than choosing to die in one glorious moment.
And just wanting that immortality of being the hero forever that we all know, but missing out on life itself.
But life itself, like you're saying, is the struggle, right? Odysseus has to struggle with family and home and kingdom, and it's not a simple fix. It's very, very messy.
It is. And he messes up a lot of times. Like, he's not a perfect, this isn't a black and white hero book. I mean, he's not a perfect person. He makes mistakes. He has, he starts out really smart, say with the Cyclops, and where he pretends that his name is no one or nobody, and ends up giving it away later so that he pays the price of having to be gone forever.
He shouts his name back to
the
main Cyclops, and
right.
he almost gets his boat destroyed as a result of that. But,
yes, and if he had just stayed a little more humble and got away from the island,
right.
But it's interesting to watch that play between that real human nature that he has, the good and the bad, and he's got to fight, and he's got to get the one to win over the other, and that's why none of the men come home with him, because they all lose in the end. They all go and eat the sheep that they're told not to eat.
The cattle.
Helios, the sun god.
Yes.
That's a strange and mysterious part of the book.
It is, but
And
it's
it's actually-
interesting that they were warned not to do that, and they did anyway. And so he's the only one that ends up home because they didn't follow the rules.
I mean, Odysseus does seem, he's not quite like Aeneas in the Aeneid, the kind of hero characterized by piety, but he recognizes that you got to take the gods seriously.
Right.
And there's something about that Helios and the cattle being eaten episode that illustrates that he takes them more seriously than his men do, perhaps.
Well, and even in going to the underworld, when the goddess Circe tells him to go to the underworld, he actually does. Or the one soldier that dies that he meets in the underworld, he goes back and buries him correctly. He does all of these things that anybody else could just be like, yeah, whatever. He'll never know, and take off and not do it. But he does it all because he's following what they're telling him to do and being obedient, and ends up getting some reward for that too.
And yet we have moments where he goes to the Cyclops and
does stupid stuff.
And is almost tempted by this kleos or glory, by revealing his name to the Cyclops, saying, it was me, Odysseus, son of Laertes, that did this to you. And then upsets Poseidon in a way that's very impious. And
now he's got to pay the
on
penalty.
his case for the rest of the 10 years that he's wandering.
Yeah, so that's a lot worse of a consequence than just getting rocks thrown at your ship.
Right.
Or just being
Poseidon
killed
is-
right off the
yeah.
bat. Like, you're just dead. No, you have to be tortured for the next 10 years and not get to go home.
The idea is that Poseidon is the main god keeping him from getting home.
Right.
From that point.
And the other gods have sort of forgotten about him for 7 years on Calypso's island.
But then at the end, he seems to have learned more of the piety, because he tells his nurse, after they kill the suitors, and the nurse is celebrating, and he says, don't do that we need to be pious. Like, it's not piety to glory over slain men. We shouldn't be doing that. It seems to me that he's learning, and becoming a better person as he moves forward through this.
So, as we said before, the first 4 books are a little strange because it sort of feels to us as readers that the story isn't started. We're told that Odysseus isn't here, where we meet this character, his son Telemachus, and it's all about him and his dealing with Athena. Athena's usually in disguise, kind of advising him to do things, and he goes off to mainland Greece. Ithaca is kind of an island removed off the main Peloponnesus, and where he meets Nestor and Menelaus to try to learn what's happened to my father, right? And that really, as we'll probably discuss, is kind of a coming-of-age trial for Telemachus, and it kind of sets up our learning later about what's been happening to Odysseus.
Because Telemachus was a baby when Odysseus left, and so he never knew his father, has grown up hearing all these stories about him, big, strong, mighty hero, intelligent man, but has never met him.
And doesn't
has never
know,
had a father
he
figure in
knows
his life.
stories about him, but are the stories even true? We know all the stories that Odysseus tells. But he even wonders at one point who his father really is. He just has to believe his mother, that his mother is telling him that's who his father is. But in the end, this whole idea of this coming of age story, I think, means a lot. Like, it takes him from being a kid, basically, under his mother's care, who you can see is kind of trying to rebel a little bit. He's not talking to her very much. He's not having a lot of communication with her, to going out and having his own adventure, and at the same time finding out about his father so that he can kind of emulate his father. He'll know enough about his father by the end that he can be a partner to his father, that I don't think he could have been if he hadn't found out these stories and hadn't learned this stuff about his father. But he's able to do all of that, and it helps him grow and mature, and he comes home prepared now to be the partner to his father to help get rid of the suitors, which I think is a huge part of the story that a lot of times get missed because there's not the sirens and the goddesses and all of the other stuff that Odysseus gets to go through. He doesn't do any of that, but he has to worry about not being killed by the suitors and get away from them at the end as he comes back. And I think it's a really great coming of age story. And I think that it's very good to read that kind of story today. Like, I think kids need that kind of story even today, especially young men, having a coming of age story where you need to go out and have this adventure and find out who your father is. And maybe that's God, and maybe that's, what you want to be like and who you want to emulate, rather than just being a kid. Like, at some point you have to go out and decide what you're going to do yourself and what you're going to be yourself.
Right, this is definitely identity building for Telemachus.
Yes.
He has grown up not really knowing who he is, because his household is overrun with suitors, and he has no idea who his father is, has never met him. And we have this beautiful moment when Odysseus comes back and reveals himself to his son, before he reveals himself to anyone else, actually. And he tells his son, I'm Odysseus, I'm your father. And Telemachus at first is very hesitant to accept this, but there's really no way that he can attest Odysseus the way that Penelope does, or Laertes, his father, does. And eventually he sort of just accepts that, yes, this is my father, this is the big, strong man that I have heard about, that I have imagined, and almost immediately they get down to planning the death of the suitors and working together as a team, like father, like son.
Which I don't know that he could have done before those first 4 chapters where he goes off on his own and has his own little adventure.
Maybe that's right. He might have been just kind of excess baggage in this fight.
And just kind of in the way.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think is very important in the sometimes scholars call the first 4 books the Telemachy, all right, is that Telemachus encounters Nestor and Menelaus, well, also Helen, so 3 major figures of the Trojan War, and, just, he's been told all his life, right, you're the son of Odysseus, you have this claim to this broader world, but he actually goes out into the broader world. He meets these figures of Greek royalty, we might say, and then very specially Helen, one scholar says this is the one good thing Helen ever does, is she kind of recognizes him and says, this has to be the son of Odysseus, right? I know Odysseus, this guy is powerful, looks like him in the same, and so it's really kind of a confirmation, hey, I'm a man, and I'm a special man, and I need to live up to that, right?
It almost gave Telemachus his name. Like, it gave him his identity in that moment when Helen says, you're his son.
Right.
It gave him some identity that I think he was lacking before. Like, he kind of innately knew he was his son. But here they are telling these great stories about Odysseus too, and you're his son. And I think it made a big difference in his life at that point too. Yeah. I think that was a huge thing as well for Telemachus to hear.
Well, and Athena, disguised as this guy named Mentis, arranges it so that Telemachus has kind of had to do this little journey in secret So he kind of evades the suitors. He makes a friend, like I think Nestor's son becomes his friend.
Yes.
So he gets a friend. So a lot of things happen for him. So again, first time you read it, it might feel like, gee, I'm really waiting for the real story to start. But it's actually a very nice setup. And it really does whet the reader's appetite for the central Odysseus story very effectively.
Right.
So that once it starts to unfold in book 5, you're like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, it's true. Well, and the part of him having a friend, I think that's another coming of age idea too, is that he goes out and makes his own friend. It's not just
Right.
his parents' friends anymore. You know, it's not just family friends. It's his friend that he, because of who he is, he was able to make this friend. And I think all of that is part of that coming of age that makes such a difference in his life. So we have this couple and their son, Odysseus, Penelope, and Telemachus, who are all have these parts to them that are different.
Okay.
I think all three of those fit into that many ways idea, where all of them are learning things that they have to do, and we need to follow the rules, but we need to do it the right way, you know, and we need to be careful of what we're doing, and there's different ways of doing things, and it's always good, like they're headed for good things. And I think this is what's so great about reading a book like the Odyssey today, how many thousands of years later, is it still means the same. Like, we still have kids who need to come of age, and we still have families who need to rely on each other and be faithful to each other, and we still have all of this, the human nature where we make mistakes and we have to pay the consequences, but we can still move forward and learn from those and become better people.
Yes, and we still have sometimes the pressure of having to play tricks, maybe not represent precisely what it is that we're feeling, in order to escape danger, in order to protect loved ones.
Until we know people better.
Until we
can trust them.
Until we can trust them. And this book also underlines some of the ways in which becoming too reliant on telling stories and tricks and so forth can be harmful. So it's beneficial to see Odysseus realizing that he wants to go home. That's the primary thing. He doesn't want to live this life of endless journeying many ways, which is a good lesson for us as well.
And I think there's a big question surrounding the classics of why even read this today, especially like this summer we have a movie on the Odyssey coming out. Right. It's like, why do you need to go back and read the book itself? And I think the fact that we have a movie about the Odyssey coming out this summer speaks to the fact that this is a very relatable book. This is a perennial story. Odysseus himself is very human in the sense that he is a man of many ways, many turns, and so are all humans. We have certain things within ourselves that contradict each other. We say we want one thing and then we do the other, and we make mistakes and we mess up, but then we all want to be this glorious hero at some point in our lives as well. I think Odysseus is a very relatable person. We want to have big good things happen to us, but also we feel this call to something that ties us down, duties or responsibilities of human life. And I think that makes him a very relatable person.
Yeah, and the fact that he wanted those over the freedom with Calypso. Like, all those duties and responsibilities actually gave his life meaning, which I think is true of us today. Our lives have meanings because of the duties and responsibilities, not because of the vacations, you know, or because of the fun stuff.
Yeah.
And so it makes a big difference in life when we're living those duties and responsibilities and growing and becoming better people from it. So we're so glad that we're able to teach this book at John Adams College along with other great classics. Why do you guys think this is such a great book that we read here?
I think the Odyssey is a great story of humans and monsters, essentially showing the difference between what makes a human and what makes a monster. And I think ultimately the Odyssey tells us what makes a human is somebody who has duties and responsibilities, who chooses to go home, who chooses to keep living, isn't out seeking glory or immortality, but somebody who is aware of what it means to be a human and following those principles.
Yeah, and I would just also add that there's some kind of, we're talking about seeing the film that's going to come out this summer of the Odyssey, and a lot of us will go see that for the sake of pleasure. And I do want to just underline that this book it's immensely rich. It's one of the books that you can read over and over again, and just you can see new insights about human nature and so forth, but you also just get the pleasure of discovering more and more about it. It's kind of an inexhaustible piece of literature that way. And so, okay, we're excited about the movie, or maybe we're not excited about the movie. There's been controversy about it. But we can recommend the Odyssey as a genuinely unique experience of artistic pleasure. And so our conversations are rich and different each time we talk about it.
And I think of it as an archetype of our lives. I think all of us have sirens calling us. All of us have Calypso on the island saying, no, just stay here and everything's going to be great. And at some time in our lives, we have to make the decision, no, I need to go home. I need to be a human, and I need to follow the rules and live the way I'm supposed to live and deal with real life. And I'll be happier because I did that. And I think that's a big part of this book, is that archetypal idea of we can all fit our lives into this story in some way, and it means something to all of us. So we're really glad that you would join us today here at John Adams College, and we hope you'll join us next time.